There's an old fisherman's tale among old timers in his area and the people he grew up with, which is once a siren sets her eyes on you, you're marked, 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 marked.
Just a normal, quiet, peaceful night. Just cast his line in when he saw something moving in the water. At first, he thought it was just like a school of fish that were like moving, that had broke like the surface of the water, but then he noticed something was off.
A viewer found a hidden journal while cleaning out his late father's office, and what it claimed about mermaids and secret shipping routes and powerful people in the world is almost impossible to believe.
A fisherman named Jack emailed me and he told me he's seen a siren in deep waters twice and he's starting to have feelings.
So most of the times when we talk about strange encounters with ancient myths, the unexplained, or things that people claim to have seen, all right, we often get stuck in two places. This is something that I've noticed. Folklore or conspiracy. Literally, that's it. Either it's treated like a fairy tale or it's treated like a hoax. Like, I'm sure you may have noticed that, okay? But I think that there's a third place, and this is a third place that I don't think we talk about often enough, but that is somewhere where I dwell, okay? And this is a place where we see repeated witness accounts, ones that sound legitimate. Geography, symbolism, folklore, I had to write this down, environmental patterns, spiritual perception, and possible truth. And these all start to overlap, okay? In case you are new to my channel, my name is Rosie and I'm a water-coded mystic, an Axis Mundi, and a late diagnosed neurodivergent woman, okay? Which means that my pattern recognition is insane and it's it's way above average. I don't say that as a flex, I say that as a fact because that helps in when I'm giving you information, like you want to be able to know me a little bit more. And so when I hear these stories, okay, I don't just ask, is this real or is this fake? I'm asking, all right, why do certain details repeat? Why do certain stories cluster around very specific areas, geography-wise? Why do old myths sound like actual representations or symbolic descriptions of something that is actually relevant and that we can actually maybe feel quite connected to today? Why do some encounters sound less like imagination and more like people trying to explain something that they just don't have language for? And what happens if we start to take the story seriously and start to map it? Not blindly believe, not instantly dismiss either. And so that's what my channel here is about. Taking the myth apart, following the threads, and asking what might actually be going on beneath the story. So let's deep dive. Okay, so today I have two stories that I want to talk about. So again, this is an aquatic channel. So these are two encounters that I heard on TikTok. Now, there are so many encounters out there and it's so easy, it's difficult to know who's telling the truth about, any of these things that are going on. But I like to think that my intuition and my perception, when I hear specific stories, it makes me go, either there's something about it or like the pattern recognition that I have, it makes me think there's something to this and I put them on the back burner. I look for patterns, I cross-reference, I've got like a whole system going, all right? I call it my oracle gallery, and it's very literal as well as figurative. I heard these two stories. I heard the one told by the lady, I heard it about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I just heard this guy called Mikey Grimm on TikTok's one today. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. My mind started to put them together. So listen to the stories, all right? I'm going to play them back to back. And then you tell me what you think, and if you notice what I notice, which are the patterns.
Mermaids, sirens. Okay, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. My entire For You page right now is about mermaids like seen off the coast of like Connecticut. So I started looking through my, my emails, found one too. The guy that sent this in didn't want his name said, so we're just going to say Tommy. He'd been fishing off the coast, of New England for 30 years. He knew the waters better than he knew himself. He said that the ocean has a way of telling you what's going to happen if you listen close enough. I'm listening, tell me. Birds will get quiet before a storm and that the waters will change if something big is moving underneath them. This particular night, there was no warning at all. Nothing that made him be like, It was a calm night. It was just after midnight and he was on the boat by himself about 5 miles off the coast. The sea was smooth as glass. The only creek was like the hole on this boat, just a normal, quiet, peaceful night. Just cast his line in when he saw something moving in the water. At first, he thought it was just like a school of fish that were like moving, that had broke like the surface of the water, but then he noticed something was off. The shape of it was all wrong. It wasn't like a mass of little bodies. It was one big body and had a face. And it just happened to be looking like right at him. Lower half of the body was submerged. The rest was up. It was like looking at him. He said the eyes were like off, too dark, too sunken in, too big. Completely aware of Tommy being on that boat. She's like looking at him, he's looking at her. They just kind of sit there like frozen for a minute. Then she starts to lift up out. Water just rolled off of her like oil, that the water looked black against her like really pale skin. Long dark hair, it like clung, stuck to her face, and like her mouth was slightly parted. And he said he should have been scared, but he wasn't. I am, Tommy, I am. Everything in his mind was telling him to run, but instead he just kind of stood there. Because he said that even though her face looked weird and off or whatever, that she was beautiful. Then he said, and this is kind of weird, okay, just between us. Then he said, not in the way that a woman is beautiful, but in the way the sea is. And I was like, okay, we listen and we don't judge. She looked like vast. He described her vast like the ocean and unknowable and dangerous. Then he saw her teeth and was like, they were small, sharp, and needle-like. She had way too many in her mouth. Like they were just jam-packed in there. He said. First thing that came to Tommy's mind was predator teeth. The kind of teeth made for tearing, not speaking. Like lifted her hand up. She had like webbing through this part, like at the very bottom, like they were all webbed together. And she was like reaching towards the boat. And he was still just standing there. I'm like, run, Tommy, run. That the water like around her was not rippling like it should have been. It was like she was standing on something. So it was just like still. It was like Ariel up in there. She was like, oh, starts singing, right? He said, no. This wasn't like the songs like you hear like in the fairy tales or in the stories. This was like a bunch of notes all happening at once and all like, harmonizing. That's when the air started to shift and things got weird. I'm like, sir, you're just now in your email describing this is when things got weird. They've been weird, Tommy. They've been weird. He described the twisty, naughty, like tune, like it was digging, he says, his words, a hook into the back of my and pulling me towards. Heard the words,
come closer.
No one Tommy probably did. Let's keep going. I was wrong. He said, I didn't hear the words. I felt them slipping into my bones, curling around my thoughts like seaweed. He leaned forward. So he didn't go, but he leaned in like, what's happening? He kind of lost sight for a second. So he's like leaned forward. He's like looking down. And he looks down and he sees her like this.
Come on. Jump down to me. I got you. Come on down here.
I don't think she really said jump, but that's what she was doing. She was like looking up at him like, come on, get in. Something told him not to do it, that the water was like, getting weird and looked even darker, and he could still just hear her song. It was getting, he says, louder and louder, and the water was so close that it felt like he was being pulled in, even though he felt like he hadn't moved. Then she started like conjuring up the elements or something, and he said that the wind like pushed him into the side of the boat, like pushed him closer to her. That's when her face changed. Suddenly, what he thought was beauty was gone. She's like gnarly, darked out, like spiky teeth, and like her face is all sunken in. And she's like, come on. Unhinged her jaw and opened her mouth like, lunged at him. He grabbed like whatever he could grab, and he like starts swinging at her. This gaff thing that's got the hook on the end, and it catches her in the shoulder. Then she let out this gnarly, horrific scream. Calm sea turned instantly violent. Waves were like slamming into his boat. He fell back, hit his head on the deck. By the time he was able to like, scoot back and climb up and all this stuff, she's gone. He was shaking so hard he could barely collect himself, but he cranked up the engine, got the hell out of there. He still goes out fishing, but he just doesn't go to that area anymore. I'm like, Tommy, boy, my guy, she's still out there. She wants you, she'll find you.
Massachusetts.
Any stories like that? Because I was like, ew.
A viewer found a hidden journal while cleaning out his late father's office, and what it claimed about mermaids and secret shipping routes and powerful people in the world is almost impossible to believe. Now, this story was sent to me by a viewer who had asked me to not use his name, and honestly, I don't know what to make of it. Obviously, I cannot prove any of it, so this is for entertainment purposes only. Now, according to him, his father passed away earlier this year, and the funeral had came and went, family visited from out of town, and eventually everyone started the difficult process of sorting through his belongings. Now, his father had always been a mysterious man. He wasn't cold, wasn't distant. He said he was a very loving father, but he was just very, very private, and the kind of person who never talked much about work or what he did to make a living. And whenever anyone had brought up the topic, he would, what he did for a living, he'd just smile and be like, "Oh, I do shipping and logistics," right? Like really
Okay.
like short, and that was pretty much it, right? No further details, no stories, nothing. But the strange thing was that despite how little he talked about it and about work and everything, the family always lived extremely comfortably, right? They had a beautiful home. Actually, they had two. The kids went to private schools, vacations. I mean, they were not hurting for anything, right? And his father somehow knew people who seemed incredibly important in the world, politicians, foreign businessmen, government officials. The viewer told me that as a kid, he'd often see expensive blacked out government style vehicles pull into the driveway late at night, and men in suits would come into his house and go into his father's office. Conversations would happen behind closed doors, and then everyone would leave again. And it was pretty normal, he said, and nobody really ever explained anything. Now, a few weeks after the funeral, the viewer was helping clean out his father's home and the office. And behind an old bookshelf they planned on removing, they found a small hidden like a compartment that was built into the wall. And inside was a black journal. And there was no title on it, no date, no markings really, just hundreds of handwritten pages. And at first, they assumed it was, his father's diary. His father was in the military and everything, and so they just started casually reading it. And the earliest entries talked about how his father's career started, and he described working for a private merchant company that specialized in transporting sensitive cargo all around the world. And the journal had claimed that he signed multiple non-disclosure agreements, and he was forbidden from ever discussing the nature of his work with anybody, not even his family. And he kept that promise, obviously, until the day that he passed. The entries were surprisingly detailed, dates, locations, shipping routes, private islands, military ports, research facilities, you name it, his father was there and did it. But the one thing that kept appearing throughout the journal, something that his father referred to only as the specimens. And the viewer assumed it was code for, he thought it was maybe like exotic animals or some type of material, until he reached an entry dated nearly 20 years ago. And according to his father, a shipping container had arrived at a secure port facility under armed guard. The cargo container was unlike anything that his father had ever seen before at this time, and it contained its own like a filtration system, he said. There were temperature controls, saltwater circulation pumps, and thick reinforced viewing glass. And his father wrote that, curiosity, of course, got the better of him, as I feel like it would with everybody. And he looked inside, and immediately he wished that he hadn't, is what he stated in the journal, because it described a pale figure submerged in dark water, something with human like eyes and human like hands, long black hair that was drifting all throughout the tank. He said it was the longest hair and thickest that he had ever seen. But below its waist, there were, of course, no legs, only a massive scaled like tail. And the entry specified that his father was told to never refer to them as mermaids. But the viewer told me the deeper that he went, the stranger the journal then became. And his father claimed that these creatures were transported all over the world for a small group of extremely influential clients, people that were connected to governments and royal families, private research organizations, and the journal never named any of them, right? I would think that the dad was journaling to, maybe cope with everything, right? It was his own sense of therapy. I don't know. But his father only referred to these groups of people as the inner core. And according to one entry, the creatures weren't considered myths. They, within certain circles of power, they were actually considered assets, property, and something to be collected, studied, moved, protected, and occasionally traded. But the part that disturbed the viewer the most wasn't the creatures themselves, really. It was how afraid his father seemed about it. And as the years went on, the entries became increasingly paranoid. His handwriting began to change over time. Sentences became extremely shorter. They were messier. He wasn't really explaining that much. And one page talked about how they're all not monsters, talking about these creatures, with no explanation, just that. Several pages later, another entry stated how he spent 20 years moving them from place to place, and the things, guarding them are far worse than what they are. I don't know what that's about, but the viewer said he got chills reading it because his father never elaborated further on that, never explained what he meant or who he was talking about. And then he reached the final pages and entries written only months before his father had passed away. And his dad claimed that he believed that someone had discovered that he was maybe keeping records of this, this journal. And he wrote that vehicles were occasionally positioned outside of his house late at night, that unfamiliar men had started appearing in places that he frequented, and he felt like he was being watched all the time, and his family, and everything that they told the public was intentional. These creatures were never discovered, they're not real, they were hidden, and the journal ended right there. There was no further explanation, no names, nothing. And the viewer said he would have dismissed the entire thing as fiction except for one detail. At his father's funeral, several men had appeared that he had never seen before, and they stood silently at the back of the service, and they wore dark suits. They spoke to nobody, they kept to themselves, and they stayed until the burial, and then they looked at each other and they left. When he had later asked his mom, who they were, she simply said that she didn't know. And, according to her, they'd been appearing around his father for as long as she could remember. So the father was obviously venting to the mother about this. Now, obviously, there's no way to verify any of this, like I said earlier. For all we know, this journal could have been a creative writing project, a fantasy story, or, the imagination of a man who lived a secret life. We really don't know. But if it wasn't, then maybe the biggest mystery isn't whether mermaids exist or not. Maybe it's why someone spent decades making sure that nobody ever found out about them. Let me know.
A fisherman named Jack emailed me and he told me he's seen a siren in deep waters twice and he's starting to have feelings for her. He said he has not told anyone in his real life, including his wife, but he thinks that if anyone's going to believe him, it's going to be me and the people on this channel. So I'm going to tell you what he said. Jack is not his real name, by the way, but he said he's been a fisherman for 18 years. His father did it before him, his grandfather before that, and it's not pretty work, but it's honest. It's long days and even longer nights. He's out of Gloucester, Massachusetts. I'm probably butchering that. I'm so sorry. And he runs a gill netter. I think that's a type of boat, and he hauls mostly cod and haddock. In his email, he said, I always thought I'd die on the water someday, but now I think I know how. And that, honestly, when I read that, just shook me. He said the first time he saw her was sometime last year. He was standing by the rail on the boat. They were hauling in the last set of the day. I think that means the last catch of the day. They were about 10 miles off the coast of Thatcher Island, if that's familiar to anyone. He's standing there stretching and he sees something bobbing in the water. And he doesn't really think anything of it because he thinks it's just a marine animal. But in a matter of seconds, it bobbed closer to the boat and it had a woman's face and she was pale. He said she had long black hair that floated behind her. At first, he actually thought it was seaweed. And he said her eyes, Jesus, her eyes weren't right. He said her eyes were too dark, too deep. He said, I swear to you, Ashley, it was like her eyes were peeling me open. So he was just staring at her. He said he couldn't move, even though he wanted to call out to the other guys or take his phone out or do something. And then she smiled at him, but it wasn't a friendly smile. He said it was insidious, like she knew something he didn't. Then she disappeared under the water. It was like a split second, like she was gone. Then the boat started acting weird. Their GPS cut out for no reason. Their radios weren't working properly. A couple weeks later, he thought he heard a woman humming on the deck, but he was alone. He said he thought he was just tired and losing it a little bit. They were working a lot, and he does not believe in sirens or mermaids or anything like that. But then he saw her again. He said they were out past Stellwagen Bank. None of this is familiar to me, so I'm so sorry. Please, somebody correct me. He said it was a calm night, barely a ripple on the water. He's out on the boat having a smoke. He said it was dead silent except for the lapping of the water against the boat, and he looks out, and about 10 yards away, he sees her again, just floating there looking at him. And he said then she whispered his name. He said even though she was far away, he heard it like it was somebody whispering right in his ear. He said he had chills head to toe. He says he hasn't seen her since, but there's an old fisherman's tale among old timers in his area and the people he grew up with, which is once a siren sets her eyes on you, you're marked. He said that they say that you can go inland, get as far away from the water as you want, but it doesn't matter. She'll call you back. And when you go, you don't come home. Now, the thing is, even though he hasn't seen her, he admitted in his email that he has started to have dreams about her face floating in the water. But he's not disgusted by it. He's curious. He wants to see her again. He said when his wife kisses him now, he kind of recoils because he feels like he's cheating on this woman floating in the water. He said he's not told his crew. He has not told his wife. That's part of the reason he wanted to be anonymous. He says he doesn't know what she wants, but he knows she's waiting. He said he will be going back on the water because that's his job. That's his family's livelihood. And he doesn't know if he can resist her. A couple things about this. This story was actually sent in to me in December. So I hadn't actually even gotten to this email yet. I searched my inbox because somebody yesterday had said, oh, do you have any stories about mermaids or sirens? So I searched both terms. And this is the only story that I have related to either of those topics. I hope Jack is okay. I haven't heard from him since. I obviously emailed him back this morning saying I was going to cover his story. But yeah, I don't even know if he knows I'm making this video or if he'll see this video, but let me know your thoughts. Do you think it's just his mind playing tricks on him? I feel like I've heard that if someone's out at sea for a long time, you start seeing things like the same as if you're in the desert, you start hallucinating. But I told my husband I was going to do this video and I read him the email and he was like, oh, there was a video a couple months ago that went pretty viral of a guy who caught a siren singing. So I looked it up and it's in the same area. I don't know the same area specifically in the ocean, but it's off the coast of Massachusetts. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Also, I have a siren tattoo. See? Anyway, keep sending me your spooky, scary stories.
So there you have it. We've come to the end of all three stories. You will see why I chose all of those three stories. They all seem to braid together so well, and they all seem to complement each other. Now remember that these stories span across 3 different decades. You can see what I mean by the similarities, the hair, the appearance, and apart from the slightly at the end, the last one, there is emphasis on the vocalization. There's a lack of vocalization, but there's definite telepathy happening in these stories. They're getting into these people, into the minds of these fishermen and causing this obsession, so to speak, which is what the show Siren depicted quite well, if you watch that. And so that is like, even without use of vocal cords, these aquatic beings seem to be able to possess the ability to enter somebody's field and enter their mind almost. You hear the very way that it was described by the second guy, like there was a hook in the brain. I found it very interesting the way that he went towards the back of the brain and he spoke about that. Nevertheless, I think that these 3 aquatic beings seem to be the same, especially the Jack story and the one that was told by the lady.
It wasn't like a mass of little bodies, it was one big body and had a face.
Closer to the boat and it had a woman's face and she was pale.
Lower half of the body was submerged, the rest was up. It was like looking at him. He said the eyes were like off, too dark, too sunken in, too big. Long dark hair, it like stuck to her face.
He said she had long black hair that floated behind her. At first he actually thought it was seaweed. And he said her eyes, Jesus, her eyes weren't right. He said her eyes were too dark, too deep. He said, I swear to you, Ashley, it was like her eyes were peeling me open. So he was just staring at her. He said he couldn't move, even though he wanted to call out to the other guys.
They seem to be the same type of aquatic creature. I'm willing to bet good money on it. And I actually think that that these stories are real and they are encountering something real. I do. Now, I'm not going to include the other story that Ashley told, which was to me was like almost a smoking gun for, yeah, this is definitely real. But that one was very interesting because I was like, they've got legs. They've got legs. But these ones I just wanted to do because I just wanted to basically for you guys to hear the story. And I wanted you to be able to start braiding the fact that I don't think that these stories are fiction. If you start looking at them through certain light, you start to see that this could be a potential 333 on the clock. These beings that seem to be like, Now, there is a girl who did a response to the video. I'll see if I can pop it in here at the end. I don't know if I will because maybe a bit too much. I actually might put it in the end of the, I'll do a recap in the next video and add it there because she gave a really good insight about what could be potentially happening with these beings. And it was one that really brought in the consciousness aspect. And it actually was something that I had been thinking about. And as far as these specific like beings, these three like in these stories, I think that she was I think that there was a like it felt very resonant with what I was feeling. That was a really interesting one because it's true, we're all on our own evolutionary path and we're all going through the shadows of our own being. So anyway, I'm so tired today, I don't know if you can tell, but it's so hot as well. But I wanted to just show you those two videos because I was like, guys, like you can hear the similarity. When you hear them next to each other, it starts to form a pattern, and that is what me and my autistic black hat is about. My neurodivergent as like pattern recognition. My mind spots patterns and wants to braid them and wants to make sense of them and wants to understand them and wants to go beneath them. That's just how my mind works. I'm like a dog with a bone. So for those of you who are here for just the stories because you find the story interesting, I hope that you like those stories. And for those of you that are here for the expanded consciousness aspect and like what could be going on here and more, I hope that interested you as well. Please leave your comments below and I will be back with another video. And I'm actually quite excited to be doing these now because I stopped for a while. So let me know what you think. Okay, and I'll see you in my next video.